welcome back to yet another Behind the Lens. I'm film critic, creator, and host of Behind the Lens, Debbie Elias. You can read my movie reviews and interviews in the U.S. and abroad, in print and online 24/7. But every Monday, you will find me right here on adrenalineradio.com, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. And thank you all for all the comments last week that we got about our very special guests, Ray Parker Jr., Fran Strine, and the legendary Dick Cavett. Dick was asking last week, should he do a podcast? Well, based on the feedback that I got from so many of you listeners, yes, he is still a very vital force in our world, and I think a lot of people would like to see a podcast from Dick Cavett. But this week, an equally fun and informative show. I am thrilled to have writer, director, actor, composer Luke Shirok is joining us at the halfway point of the show to talk about his new film. It is a musical fantasy rock opera, Tommy Battles the Silver Sea Dragon. It's a beautiful film. The music, which is all written by Luke. The lyrics, it is from beginning to end. It is a perfect meld of music, lyrics, cinematography, color, choreography, and I'm very excited we're going to get to talk to him about that. But before we get to Luke, I have a treat for you today, and for BAILEE Madison, who I know is trying to listen to today's show just so she can hear what her director, JOHANNES Roberts, had to say about working with her on The Strangers Pray at Night. Right now, we're going to play for you with minimal editing, my complete interview with JOHANNES Roberts, and not really a conversation. As all of you know, everything I have is pretty much a conversation, as opposed to rapid fire questions and answers. JOHANNES, many of you saw his film last year, 47 Meters Down, In the Deep. His prior works, The Other Side of the Door, Storage 24, Dark Hunters, The Man Knows Horror, The Man Knows Fear, The Man Knows Tension. He teams up with cinematographer Ryan Sammel for the first time. Ryan, an amazing cinematographer, probably best known for his work with director Jim Mickle on films like Stakeland, Cold in July, We Are What We Are, as well as Officer Down and Experimenter with Peter Sarsgaard. Ryan's work is fabulous, and for him to pair up with JOHANNES, the result in Strangers Pray at Night is amazing. JOHANNES also reteams with his longtime editor Martin Brinkler, editing so key in the tension factor with horror films, the jump out of your skin factor, and there are plenty of them here. But of course, the bulk of this all comes down to BAILEE Madison, who steps out of her comfort zone, delivers a performance that, as many years as I've known BAILEE, and BAILEE knows I love her, I didn't think she had this in her. So she surprised the heck out of me. Came in at number 3 at the box office this weekend. And it's expanding, and the word of mouth is great. Everybody go see The Strangers Pray at Night. But right now, listen to what JOHANNES Roberts and I had to say about the making of The Strangers Pray at Night.
It's so good to talk to you again, and oh my God, JOHANNES, this is an amazing film. You blew my mind with this film.
It's amazing.
It is so outstanding. I mean, you know how much I loved 47 Meters Down, and I loved your prior work, but to see what you have done here and working with Ryan as your cinematographer, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I've loved Ryan's work for years with everything he's done with Jim Mickle. Cold in July, We Are What We Are, Stakeland, and then he did Experimenter, and I love his work. But to see your visual sensibility and his visual sensibility come together, it's just absolutely stunning.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. Lovely to hear.
How did you go about approaching this? Because you really, it feels so much more visceral and reinvigorated than the first film.
It was, yeah, you know, it was a tricky one always when you're approaching a sequel, and this came on my desk, and I really liked the first movie, and I love what Brian did on the first movie, and I was like, okay, this is a bit of a minefield, you know. The first movie has a real following, and it's been 10 years, so is it a reboot, is it a sequel, is it a, you know, where are we kind of thing. And then I read the script, and I realized there was a real opportunity to pay homage to the first movie, and, you know, make a movie within the world of the first movie that sort of tonally fit with the kind of slow build family drama that then goes completely off the rails. But then to bring in my own personality and basically to make the John Carpenter movie I've always wanted to make, and, you know, and sort of make the 80s movie that I would crave to watch these days, you know, Christine, The Fog, you know, that's all in there, and which is the reason I used Ryan as the DP. You know, he was the first person I just went, look, I just seen Cold in July, and I was like, I want this guy, and let's make a movie together.
I mean, and I'm glad you mentioned the cold, the fog, the steam, because that's one of the things, as soon as I saw the film, that was one of the things is that the ambient, the yellow haze covered with fog of the street lamps really sets the tone for us, the visual tone for the night. And then you just explode from there with color and saturation and honing in on very specific things that just, send chills up and down your spine. But I mean, the lighting and the lensing here is so well done, Johannes. You know, what you do with containing the space in a trailer park. So you have them, essentially, Kinsey and Luke, pretty much keep going in a circle. And we subconsciously feel that they're running in circles trying to escape. But it's all contained. But then you make this great use of all the negative space because of the darkness. And it just heightens. Like, you go into the bedroom as, you know, Kinsey's in there and she's crawling back on the floor and it's dark and you can't see, and then all of a sudden there's the painted china face popping up and it's like you jump. Such an incredible job of the black on black texturing. How difficult is that to really bring that to life and incorporate that into your visual story?
I don't know. You know what? The biggest thing is it's sort of working out the canvas you're gonna paint on, and also the style. And I think once you got those two things, you know, it was, you know, working with Freddie, the production designer, Freddie Waff, and working out how this trailer park would look. And we built it because I just couldn't find something that I felt was working for me.
Wait a minute, you're shooting in Georgia and you couldn't find a trailer park that would work for you?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was all shot in Kentucky, actually. But I just wanted a very distinct feel. Mm-hmm. And you go to a trailer park and it's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trailers, and it's very packed in, and it sort of, there was, I wanted this in, you know, I wanted the geography, it has like hills, and there's a lot of space, and there's a lot of like anything could come from anywhere, and it just sort of, it's this enormous rolling kind of crazy place. I wanted to feel a bit fantastical, actually, to be honest. Once they go through the bridge, mm-hmm. You're kind of in this kind of another world, really. And so once you have that, and you know, we had a very distinct style that we were aiming for, Ryan and I, with the zoom lenses and the sort of 70s, 80s look. It kind of, it sort of all fell into place there. And you know, the look that Brian Patino had created in the first movie with the three strangers was so strong, mm-hmm. that it was it actually just became great fun. You know, I mean, the big shock jump, the one you just pointed out in the tunnel. That we tried that a couple of times. It just wasn't working, and then I just did it one night in the daytime. Actually, we just sort of boarded up the tunnel, and I just tried something. And it was so simple. It was like the simplest little thing, but it's just worked incredibly well. It was a fun one to do, though.
But yeah, in the tunnel, in the drain pipe, that is an incredible shot. And the way you've got the light just focused in to pick up, really, you see Bailee's mouth as she's screaming, and really one eye is what you really focus in on from the headlight when she starts screaming.
Yeah.
It is so incredible. Similarly, what really ratchets up fear are those shots that you and Ryan got where Bailee is underneath a trailer behind the trellis, and all we see is her one eye in between the slats. That was stunning. Absolutely stunning.
Yes, I mean, Ryan's a genius with lighting. And then, I mean, so some of this stuff, it's funny how it works, you know. I seem to remember that sequence there. It was very much on the off the cuff kind of thing. Is I was just trying to work out where the hell they're going to hide. I was literally like, look, why don't we just pull one of these things off here and we'll stick them under the trailer? That it just seemed to work nicely. And then we put the camera on it, and then of course you got all the trailer stuff, and it's like, fuck, this is great. But yeah, sometimes things just. Magic just happens,
The trellis thing and pulling it off and your inspiration just do it. Kids do that all the time.
Yeah.
So the authenticity of what you're bringing in as people are trying to hide. I mean, these are places that adults may not necessarily think of, but kids, and when you're afraid, you really revert back to being a kid, and and you want mom and dad, and it's like, where are you going to hide? And it's like, I'm hiding under here. You're not really thinking too clearly. So I mean, just so wonderful with those little touches that you brought in. And similarly, I've got to say, you mentioned Freddie's production design. The interiors of those trailers.
Oh, phenomenal. Yeah, phenomenal.
Oh my God. Period perfect. It feels timeless, Johannes.
Yeah.
It feels timeless, yet captures, with the fake wood paneling and all, captures that 70s vibe.
Yeah.
That will never go away.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with that. That was the whole feel, as I say, is that when they cross that bridge, you've got into this kind of little bubble, this kind of other world that is kind of timeless.
I mean, and the whole film, it's so visceral on multiple levels, not just on the visual level, but your sound design. This is a truly immersive oral experience. The sonic texture is visceral as you play with the volume. Your sound designers did a great job. And then layering, we've got the tap, tap, tap of a single key on a window, the sound of gravel under the foot, panting, feet running on wet ground and grass, which is very specific sound. The sound of the carburetor on the truck, the dull axe that's one of my favorites, the dull axe being dragged on the ground. Just every little sound. I mean, how closely was that on paper? Or was this something that you and the sound designers just came up with to really incorporate and punctuate that sonic experience?
Yeah, I mean, this was a big one. I'd worked, Pin Drop I did the sound on, and I'd done a couple of movies with them already, so I knew that they would deliver for me. And I think the thing about the first movie, about Brian's movie, is that the sound design is really, I think it's the best I've ever heard in a horror movie. And I go back to that movie and I'm like, wow, because nothing really happens in the movie, and you don't see anything really, and it's these three strange masked people playing with the two characters, and it's all about sound, and And I really, really took that from the first movie and wanted to play with that as much as possible. And yeah, so it's quite it was a tricky one in terms of I really wanted to go a bit more full on with music and have fun there. So we had to find the quiet spaces for Pin Drop to really play around with. But yeah, I mean they we knew that this was going to be a very sound intensive project, and we had a lot of fun with it, or they had a lot of fun with it.
Well, and you really just capitalized on the whole concept of it's a lot more frightening if you can't see something but you just hear sounds because your imagination takes over. And that's exactly what happens here. I mean, I was like grinning from ear to ear watching this film with everything that you put into it.
That's amazing.
I haven't enjoyed a horror film, quote unquote horror film, this much in a long time.
That's brilliant.
I mean, it just amazed me. And I gotta ask about the needle drops, the actual music.
Yeah.
I mean, this is it's hilarious. And the fact that we all now know how to kill people in like 2 minutes and 38 seconds of a song running. Hey, very valuable information.
Yeah. I knew I was going to use an 80s track over the pool sequence, and that had all been designed for that. And I'm a massive Jim Steinman fan. I love all his work, and so I was like, look, just use Bonnie Tyler track, Touch the Heart. We'll try that over that. So my editor put it on, and the whole sequence just really came together, and it was just fantastic. We never tried another song. That was it. Just worked. We just laid it on, bang, it worked. And then as we were finding the movie, it became very apparent how big a part the truck was playing in the movie, because I really wanted to make Christine, it's one of my favourite movies, so that had been a big influence on the way I'd gone about it. And so we just started trying music coming out of the car all the time, as it did in Christine. And we played around with sort of some cliche sort of country stuff, and it sort of worked. And then it's like, why don't we just take this 80s vibe and really, really go with it? Because the whole movie has been shot like a timeless, or it's shot like an 80s movie. And it was like, well, let's really go with that. And we started off with the opening, and suddenly the whole movie, we realized what the movie was. And I just had so much fun. Every one of those tracks, I would just go home every night, and I'd go through my library of what I've grown up with, and then also just try and find new, unheard of 8-bit tracks that had passed me by, like that Kim Wilde song, Cambodia. I mean, that was just like, I'd never heard that before. And when I found that, I was like, yeah, this is perfect. And it was a really great fun thing to discover these lost 80s tracks, and then also to play around with all the big Jim Steinman tracks, like the Air Supply song at the end, Making Love and Nothing at All. It's just great. It was a really good, fun experience, that.
Well, and the thing is, you bring in the Air Supply track, and it is, and you've got Total Eclipse of the Heart, and you've just got, these romantic songs thrown in there, these ballads that are so associated not only with the 80s but with couples and romance, and it is so counterintuitive to what's unfolding. That juxtaposition, I just think, is just brilliant. But at the same time, it also celebrates the brother and sister love that Kinsey and Luke have for each other, and the camaraderie.
Yes, yeah, I think so. I mean, it just takes the movie in a very different direction, in a slightly operatic direction towards the end. But I really like that. I get chills when I see that end sequence.
Oh my God!
It's sort of gone in a whole new different place.
Well, and I have another sequence. The most beautiful sequence in the film is the pool with all the neon. Oh my God. How did you go about designing that and structuring that whole sequence? Because that sequence you could just lift out and make its own short film.
Yeah, it's funny. People always talk about lightning in a bottle with films, and sometimes you capture it, sometimes you don't. And I think that sequence is a real example of that. We went back and forward many times on that sequence, like before we shot it, like where are we going to shoot it? How's it going to work? Is it, should we? I think we even at some point we talked about cutting it or not having the palm trees, or so we sort of went round and around, and we found this place, the swimming pool, which was not in the trailer park, which was miles away, but we were having to use it for tax incentive reasons, actually, because we needed to shoot in a certain area, and it was just totally, in many ways, it was just totally wrong. It was, this pool was supposed to be a small kind of motel pool, but this pool was like double Olympic-sized pool. It was the bottom of it was like maybe 8 meters deep. It was just insane, and we were right by a river, and it was like, how are we going to make this sequence work? But it was like, okay, let's do it. We can make this happen. And we sort of went back and forward on it all the time, and then we got everything. Freddie found these amazing palm trees. Ryan lit the pool up, and it was just, whilst everything was going on, it was taking such a long time to just set up, because it was such a big old thing. I just took the doubles and just filmed everything on an iPhone. And literally, I don't often do that, but that's we just shot the shots I did on an iPhone. I wanted to shoot in a like it's my favorite shot of the movie where pin-up runs out and you have this wide shot that zooms in, and it's a proper retro shot, and it just kind of clicked and came together. It was like a magic. And then Damien as the man in the mask, and Lewis just brought it to life, and it just had this kind of intensity but it was just a crazy roll of the dice that all came together perfectly. But it could have gone so wrong. I mean, when we turned the lights on, every single insect from Kentucky that was living on the river beside us came into that pool. I've never seen anything like it. I had to get a whole team of people to be taking, like, the water is actually bubbling with insect life.
Oh my God.
I can't film this, it's supposed to look, and you've got this, it was unbelievable. I've got shots of just like creatures in there, so it was stuff like everything could have gone wrong. In the final sort of end sequence where Lewis was running out of the pool, we were running out of light, and it was an impossible shot to do. So that scene could have gone so badly wrong, but somehow it just kind of worked. It's beautiful, crazy scene.
The neon, and then the lighting, the underwater lighting of the pool, and the color that resulted, just absolutely exquisite, and such a gorgeous contrast to the terror that's unfolding throughout the night.
Yeah. No, it does. I think there's just sort of something, again, that you just could never sort of plan or know is when Lewis steps over the line from being a boy into being a killer, and then you have the palm trees flashing, and you just have the blood on his face, and you have the Bonnie Tyler track, and it's something really sort of beautiful, but terribly disturbing about it. And it's just, like I said, it's lightning in a bottle. It's a great scene, great moment.
You know, how invaluable was it having Martin doing your editing again?
Yeah. It's huge for me. We're now 4 films in, and we have such a shorthand, and we're so laid back together. But every morning I would shoot the stuff, and he would have it, and then at 10 in the morning I would, or whatever it would be. I was shooting night, so it would be sort of my equivalent of sort of like 3 in the morning. I'd pick up the phone and he'd go, "No, didn't work," or "Yes, it did work," or "What on earth were you doing here?" And I would then get angry and be like, "You don't know, you're not looking at it right, and you're not looking at it right." And I'd put down the phone, and then half an hour later I'd call back up and go, "Okay, what didn't work?" and it was great. We had such a good shorthand that he can look at something and he goes, "You didn't get that. That didn't quite work." So we were running. The great thing about it is, because of that, I run a pickup shoot constantly through the movie. So, because I'm pretty, I've come from a background of very small movies. I can work very, very fast, and I'd come back the next day and I'd sit everybody down, talk to Ryan and the producers, and I'd say, "Look, I know we're pushed, but I need to get this shot and this shot again because it's just not landing." And it's a really, really useful thing to have, because then, all those beats that you normally would miss, I made sure that we got. I mean, we would always be pushed. People on the producers and Ryan would hate Martin, because it would always be like, he was this mysterious off-camera person that was constantly going, "No, that didn't quite work," or "That didn't quite work." But it's very, very important to have that team around you that you have a shorthand with.
How strictly did you stick to Ben and Brian's script? And I ask this because, the way the story unfolds, we eventually see Kinsey step up her game. She turns from being the hunted into the hunter. She fires the shotgun. But, one of the great things, the most heartfelt moment, was when she swings that baseball bat in the bed of the truck, because earlier in the movie, early on, she's talking about, she was never allowed to, swing the bat. Yeah. And Luke joked with Kinsey, you couldn't lift it. So it really brings that brother-sister moment full circle. So I'm wondering, was that always on the page, or did that kind of develop through the characters in the movie?
Yeah. I mean, to me, I would always... a script is a blueprint, and the writers have no idea of the situation and the world that we're in. So I would take the outline of the movie, and then you create the world beyond that. So very much the Kinsey, the whole baseball thing, that was. That developed from really wanting to find this arc for her, her journey, which I felt was sort of like super important for the movie. So the baseball scene was something that we had very much bought in. And it really worked. I'm very pleased that you picked up on that. I'm not, it was a nice, for me as a director, I like that sort of, just that little arc kind of thing of it was an important thing to have. But I mean, it was a great, that script had been worked, obviously by Ben and Brian over the years, and I mean, for me, look, I'm a writer-director, so I know how to shape something, and I think it's very important that a director does that and brings brings a unity to a project.
Well, you know, I saved the best for last. I would be remiss not to ask you about my girl Bailey. You know, and you know what led you to cast Bailey and her performance here, Johannes. I've never seen anything come from her as strong as this. I knew she was a good actress, but the level of emotional depth that you bring out of her in this performance with strength and power is mind-blowing. So to see this, it was like magic for me.
Yeah, she's wonderful. What she had, I remember we sitting down and chatting with her one day on set, and I basically just say, look, don't ever change. Because one of the big skills she has is she makes me feel very comfortable, and I hope she would in return say the reverse about me. And it's an amazing thing to have when, you know, she's just up for playing. And she'll listen to notes, and I never feel uncomfortable saying anything or worried that she'd take she'd take it the wrong way or get grumpy with it. You know, my direction to her most of the time would just be to go, I'd come into set and I'd go, Bailey, don't f this up, and then walk away. And we would just have like a really relaxed sort of relationship between the two. And what that meant is that we could just really push and play, push the boundaries and play. And, if I felt like she wasn't giving me what I wanted, I didn't feel in any way worried about going, look, Bailey, that was... actually, it would be fun. And she just really dug deep, and it was such a... For a director to have that is so much fun. It's just a joy to play around with. Every day we'd come on set and we'd take the scenes and we'd work them and work out where we'd want to go with them. But yeah, she has this it's just incredible professional attitude that's just, she's 18 going on 50,
Yeah.
She's like the most grown up kid that I've ever met. She's just really smart and professional and she's just a great actress.
Of course, this is such a pivotal film in her career because this really takes her out of the sweet, the young teen, preteen genres and really bumps it up. It's her first R-rated film. And, we really see her come of age in this film.
Yeah.
But contributing to Bailey's performance, though, Lewis Pullman, where did you find Lewis? He's wonderful. And the two of them together, there is never a moment you don't believe they're brother and sister.
Yeah, he is absolutely phenomenal. He's a very different actor to Bailey, and would work in a very different way, but with just the honesty to his performance. And the casting director found him. He's Bill Pullman's son, so it was kind of like, look, we just had this guy audition. You should take a look at this. And I remember just seeing the audition tapes, and it's very hard to tell normally on audition tapes. And there was just something about him. I was like, I wanted him to be my brother. There was like I never got my head round the role. It was with the script, there was a real worry that the kids could come across bratish, and you'd find them pretty annoying, and you just want them to die, basically. And I remember when he did his read, I was like, oh, this is interesting. In that there was like a calm big brother feel to him that was not cool, but it was just he was just great. I was like, oh yeah, he's the perfect foil to Kinsey. He's the sort of well-adjusted but not annoyingly sort of like jock. Like, I don't know, everything sort of worked, and we put them together, and they just gelled as well. And both their performances, they both work in a very different way, and it's great. I've never had so much fun as playing with those guys. You know, it would just be like, and it would be playing. You know, we'd get on set and just, I could push them as far as I liked. I could, you know, and they would come to me and go, look, can we try this? What do we do here? And it's hilarious. But yeah, he's insanely good actor.
So
just lucky cast, you know, great cast.
So would you come back and direct a sequel to this one?
Yeah, I mean, let's see what happens March 9th.
And that was Johannes Roberts. And yes, you heard Johannes correctly. Lewis Pullman, who plays opposite Bailey Madison in The Strangers Pray at Night, is the son of none other than one of my all-time favorite people, my friend Bill Pullman. So this film is a win-win for me on every single level. And right now, something else that is a win-win is welcome to the fabulous and multi-talented Luke Shirok. Hello, Luke. Welcome to Behind the Lens.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my God. After seeing your film, I'd shoot myself if I didn't have you. What a... Exquisite is the first word that came to my mind as I am watching Tommy battles the Silver Sea Dragon. Oh, my God. This is a...
Wow, thank you so much.
I mean, Luke, this is a beautiful, beautiful film. You just had your final performance at CineQuest last night.
Yep,
you know,
that's right.
How has the audience received this film thus far?
Well, so far it's been great. We've been getting a lot of great reviews, and I'm really pleased with the response. I just, you know, with this kind of project, which has so many layers and so many different elements, it's kind of hard to identify the audience, you know, whether we should approach it as a musical theater thing and try to find musical theater fans, or if we are looking for more of a art house film audience or what. And it kind of, you know, it was always a conversation with our PR team about how to pitch the movie or how to frame it, but it turned out not to be an issue. Actually, I was just really impressed with the audience's kind of well-rounded response. People loved the music and the kind of, I don't know, like handmade art direction of the film, and then at the same time the Q&A just demonstrated a really thoughtful reception of the themes of the film's story, and I was just, as a writer, I was really pleased with that.
I mean, this is, you know, as I was watching it, I kept thinking of the rock opera Tommy. As I'm watching it, you followed right along with, there must be, I think, 2 sentences, if that, in the film that are spoken dialogue, everything. And for film goers and television viewers that have not seen the feature film, the big screen film Tommy, I would equate this to Buffy the Vampire Slayer and the episode Once More with Feeling, the Emmy-nominated episode where everything was sung. And to give people an idea of how to gauge this. So beautifully crafted. So I'm curious, Luke, because this is a real blend of music and lyrics, choreography, cinematography, and color. Color plays a big part in this one in terms of defining emotion and character. What came first? Did the story come? Did the musical composition come? What was your process? Because you're writer, you're director, you're starring in it, you're composer, and you're producer. So, so you're wearing so many hats. but there had to
Yeah.
be a progressive chain for you as a creative force.
Yeah, it's true, and it's true there was kind of a workflow, but it's hard to describe because it was so kind of I don't know, cyclical. Like there were so many. So I mean, the music came first, but it's not exactly accurate to say that there was just a set of songs and then we crafted a film around it. Because the songs were really rough. They were demos and just kind of ideas. They were well enough kind of, I don't know, mapped out to shoot the film to it. But when I went back in post-production, I was able to make a lot of adjustments, and there were a lot of edits to the soundtrack that were made to accommodate the editor's decisions. And so there was really this kind of audiovisual dialogue that that we were able to enact, and like you said too, the visual mise en scène and the color, the production design was so integral to the process, and there were things that that were in the script, and then things that just kind of happened through the creative, collaborative process on set. And I guess it's with any film, but especially with a musical film where it's just so highly integrated. There's really it's really hard to identify what came first. It's kind of this like weird synthesis that just happens. It's kind of like alchemy or something.
You know, and of course the lyrics are your dialogue.
Yeah.
And you go a step further than what everybody thinks of as a musical in the traditional sense, where, and what people, I'm talking the traditional Busby Berkeley,
Yeah.
Stanley Donen musicals of the heyday of Hollywood, where the songs are an integral part of the story, with the lyrics,
Right.
with the tempo. But here, the songs are in lieu of dialogue. The songs become the dialogue. So it's so,
Yeah.
and you really see and hear this unfolding from beginning to end. And that in and of itself, it's one thing to write a script. It's another to write a script in lyrics that you have to set to music with a beat and a tempo, and just so beautifully done, Luke. Was it always
Well, in that sense, yeah, it actually has more, it owes more to the tradition of opera than musical theater. And that's something I've talked about a little bit in other interviews, but, my background is classical music more than popular music, so I was actually taking inspiration from classical composers and romantic composers, and opera was kind of the frame of reference in terms of the form and just the mythical scope of the story, this kind of grand archetypal narrative that spans through romance and through psychology and philosophy, and this kind of epic scope is really operatic more than what you see on the Broadway stage.
Very much so. Yeah, I don't get a Broadway sense when I see this. When I watch Tommy Battle's Silver Sea Dragon, I get a musical sense, but I get a rock opera sense.
Yeah,
very much an operatic sense.
Yeah,
and we don't see that today. So I mean, for many people, who weren't exposed to the earlier, the Tommy big screen rock opera, this is a whole new experience for them. And without people realizing it, they are being exposed to the elements of opera. Because so many people, you go through school and it's like, oh my God, I don't want to learn about opera. I don't want to go to an opera.
Yeah.
So you're actually widening everybody's horizons here, Luke.
I hope so. I mean, opera gets a bad rap. I think it's a shame, and it has a lot to do with just the vocal stylizations and kind of the archaic, I don't know, set design. And I mean, there's a lot of really progressive modern stagings of old operas, but I mean, I think musically, for new audiences, it remains a little bit stuffy and inaccessible. So, and it's expensive too to go to the opera. So I thought, why not try to reinvigorate this more popular expression of opera in the rock opera and put it on the screen and make it more accessible and with a little bit more of a modern pop rock, musical style. And yeah, it's a shame that these rock operas have fallen out of fashion. There was a time when this was kind of a burgeoning genre, but it's a hard one to pull off, I guess. I don't know, I guess.
It is, but I think, possibly with some of the musicals that we've had popping up, over the past few years, I think that may be helping to open people's eyes and ears to experience more of the musical genre.
Yeah.
And then once you get exposed, okay, then you open up even further with a film like Tommy Battles the Silver Sea Dragon.
Yeah, and I think it's good timing. Like you said, there has been a resurgence of musical theater films that have been getting a lot of press and a lot of great reviews and such. So that's been, I think, in our favor, for sure.
Now, was it always your intention to direct this one?
I was always planning to be involved heavily as either a co-director or maybe even just as the writer, but I always wanted to make sure I was working with a director who really understood the story. I didn't know for sure that I was going to direct it. I had a team, and I think it's common for musical films and pieces with this many moving parts to have like a kind of a directorial team. And that's how we started out, but it was really not my intention to finish the film as the sole director, but there were some like personal dramas during the production that required that my co-director drop out and move back to New York to kind of focus on his own life and personal affairs. So that was totally out of my control, and it turned out that I ended up finishing the movie as the sole director and picking up some slack as a producer, which was interesting, a steep learning curve for sure.
You had a lot of learning curves here. The music, not a learning curve for you, but
no, that was my only expertise, you could say. I had to fake it till I made it, do the rest.
Well, I'm curious, because of wearing the producer's hat, which means you're overseeing stuff, but you're working on stuff that you aren't quite sure how to execute or do. So, how did producer Luke deal with working with his team, particularly working with Henry Zabalos, your DP? Henry's work is just gorgeous. Between Henry, your production designer, and your choreographer, because the movement within this film, it's not just somebody walking across a room. Every movement of yourself and your main co-star, Celine held, it's all, it's floating. You're floating, in a choreographed fashion. So, you've got your production designing these sets, working on the color for the emotional punctuation points. You've got Henry's lovely lighting and framing, and you've got the choreography. So what was that learning curve of that little triumvirate of pieces?
Yeah. I mean, it was steep. The learning curve was steep. It was also thrilling because I've worked in the past. I've worked on smaller projects where I just didn't have, the team, the collaboration that I had on this one, which, is really my favorite place to be, in the middle of a collaborative circle. And I was just so lucky to have these fantastic artists to work with, and the learning curve was about one of letting go, because I was literally, as you say, like learning choreographic steps in order to float through a beautifully designed, set, while this whole crew of, super talented grips and electric, technicians and cinematographer Henry, they're all setting up for these amazing shots that I just couldn't even possibly micromanage any of it if I wanted to. I had to let go and let these people do their amazing work. Because and like you said, I mean, as soon as I started taking on more producerial roles, I'm literally like getting ready for my shots as Tommy and talking to Henry about the shot list, and meanwhile signing checks for payroll, literally all at the same time. And like, this was just a crazy scenario where I had to just, compartmentalize to a degree, but also just let go and let things flow and trust the process.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you were composing and when you were putting this together, were you getting any visions in your head, creating any images for how you envisioned this film to look? Because as I said, your production design, the apartment that Tommy and Carolyn live in, the desk elevated, attached to the wall near the ceiling with the clouds above it that light up like lightning with neon lightning bolts. So inventive, so creative, fits the character of Tommy perfectly with that design. But it's so original. So I'm curious, especially when you listen to the lyrics. When you listen to what's being sung, it really all fits together. So I'm curious whether you were envisioning a lot of the look while you were actually writing.
I was, and it's kind of, this was kind of where it all started, to be honest, because when you're writing lyrics, lyrics are not always just the way we say things. They're often lyrical. They're often rich with metaphors and imagery. And my music has always been kind of narrative driven and full of this kind of like fantastical, poetic, lyrical stuff. So I started to recognize that there was a lot of visual elements to my songcraft, and I thought, what if I just actually made it, shown it, actually visualized these elements and created these metaphors for real. So you have, the floating bed and the floating desk, and you have the red yarn that she attaches to Tommy's collar that allows him to find his way home, and all of these kind of like figurative elements that actually become real in this musical universe. These were all just kind of lyrical ideas that would have just been sung about, and I just thought, this could be really magical to just show it. So that was all in the script. That was all stuff that, and I think that's why the production got a lot of support from really incredible artists who became our heads of department, like Maki, the production designer. She read the script, and all of this stuff was right there. She was able to see exactly what she was going to do, and it was great. I mean, that was partly why our working relationship was so fluid, because Maki went to Detroit like 3 or 4 weeks before I was able to go, and started working on the pre-production for the art department. And by the time I got there, I remember the first thing I saw when I walked into the warehouse where we built the set, I saw these giant like handmade clouds that she had built. And she walked me over to these clouds and she said, "Watch." And she clicked this remote control, and the lights inside started flashing like lightning. And I was just like blown away, because it was exactly what I had hoped it would be. This really handmade, magical effect, but there it was. She totally nailed it. And, it's this kind of craft that I could never do myself. I can write it on the page, but that's
Well,
is so fun because you get to work with people who can actually do that stuff.
and that's one of the things that I so appreciate about this film, Luke, is that you go back to the basics with these handmade effects. It's not
Hmm.
CGI,
Yeah, yeah.
handmade effects, and elements that surprise you when you see them, but they surprise you in a good way, in a beautiful way.
Mm.
Other key sequences in here, since our boy Tommy, who is you, is he's on
Hmm.
trial for his own demons and guilt and life, and
Hmm.
you create a choir of courtroom sequences that is
Yeah.
outstanding. Pretty much there is no color. It's grays and browns. It's very
Hmm.
flat, so it really distinguishes from Tommy's
Yeah.
life and world. Um, but it's so well executed, so well designed and executed. You really felt as if the world was ganging up on Tommy in those courtroom sequences.
Hmm. Yeah, that was I mean, that was the goal, was to kind of contrast that scene from the very colorful and kind of magical, whimsical, romantic settings of the second act, and to kind of bookend the film with these more, like you said, kind of gray and brown and muted tones of the courtroom atmosphere, and to kind of try and invoke this film noir, almost black and white, kind of Kafka-esque
Mm-hmm.
universe where there's this big bureaucratic machine that's working against you, and you don't really know what the rules of the game are, and you have to kind of uncover it as you go. And um, yeah, I really was impressed and so pleased with the way that the production design helped invoke that kind of dystopic, I guess, impersonal
Mm-hmm.
feeling, and yet at the same time the choreography and the acting, and it's still all very, I don't know. There's still kind of a magical whimsy to the courtroom, but it's
Mm-hmm.
just this dark version of it, I guess.
Yeah, the fact that you have all the jurors looking similar, a very timeless
Mhm.
look. The cloche hats of the 1940s and 50s,
Mhm.
the pearl necklaces, the shirt-waisted dresses the women are wearing. It
Mhm.
really it's a timeless kind of ambiance that you create with those courtroom sequences that could really be taking place anytime, anywhere.
Mhm.
And the choreography then lends itself so beautifully, where you have the jury box that you've got, they're singing one way and they're moving one way. Then you've got
Mhm.
all the observers in the courtroom, they're moving a completely different way. It really
Yeah.
is just so incredible. It's very geometric even to look at.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I think two things really. I mean, you were talking about the wardrobe, and I have to mention Olga. Olga Mill, our costume designer, really just knocked that one out of the park. I mean, they had a really small team, and they had to dress, I don't know, like 50 plus extras in this very specific, almost period
Mm-hmm.
uh, wardrobe, and they found all of that stuff. They made a lot of it, and they found a lot of it just at thrift stores, and they just collected this massive wardrobe and had had to fit so many different actors, and they just did such an amazing job to create that, kind of timeless look.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also just really lucked out with the location. We shot it in Detroit at the Detroit Masonic Temple, and this building is itself mythical, and it has this kind of neoclassical Gothic look to it, and it's just really wild. These rooms that are actually still in use, but they do rent them out a lot for films because they're so, just, I don't know, they're so special. They're courtly and kind of institutional, but they're also more than that. They're also kind of like
Regal almost.
ominous and dark and
Yeah.
regal. Yeah, it's more than just, we looked at actual courtrooms, but
No.
they were too sterile. We wanted something that was almost like, regal.
Mm-hmm.
And this really, we almost didn't have to design that set at all. It came like that. It was crazy.
Well, unfortunately, we're actually out of time for today, Luke. But before I let you go, I've got to ask you, what is next for Tommy Battles the Silver Sea Dragon? More festivals, a distribution deal yet?
Yeah.
Where are we going with this so people can see it?
Yeah, well, we're on our festival tour right now, you could say. We just premiered at CineQuest, and we have a few more festivals lined up, but I'm not allowed to tell you yet which ones, but we're going to announce very soon. So if you follow us on Facebook, it's at I am Tommy Silver, or you can go to our website, iamtommysilver.com, and we're going to announce all of our festival screenings coming up this year, and we'll have all of our information there about future distribution and where you can find the film online. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Luke, please tell me you'll come back on the show as you get some more festivals booked on. I would love to have you come back and talk more about this film.
Absolutely. It would be my pleasure.
And I can't recommend it highly enough. So everybody, iamtommysilver.com, go there, follow on Facebook. And if this film is anywhere near you, trust me, you will be so happy you spent the money to go see it. Luke, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Me too. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Luke. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
And that was Luke Shirock talking about Tommy Battles the Silver Sea Dragon. So check out iamtommysilver.com to find out where you can see the film be on the festival circuit and when distribution kicks in. That is, again, all the time we have today. Next week, Ned Airbar is with us talking about his feature film, California No. So until next week, I'm Debbie Elias. This is Behind the Lens.